non-stop solo. Now, I just teased you with the spur to St. Louis, which is what Lindbergh flew across in May of 1927. First person to fly across the first President Scott. Lindbergh was the first man to fly across the Atlantic solo from New York to Paris. May 20 and 21st. His was 1927, hers was 32, 5 years to the day apart. It is not a coincidence, it's not a fluke, it's not by accident. First man followed by the first woman soloists. It is a planned flight between her and her husband, a guy named George Palmer Putnam. G.P. Putnam is the man who makes Amelia so well that she is still pretty much the only lady pilot you think of her era. When she was flying airplanes back then in the 20s and 30s, there was 149 other lady pilots out there that you don't hear anything about in today's world. So she's going to fly this airplane from Nova Scotia, Newfoundland to Paris. Now she takes off and she heads out of the Atlantic Ocean, and this flight is very rough for her. She has icing problems on her wings. She has engine problems. She has instrumentation problems as well. And one of the things that makes Amelia tick, think you and I are all different, allergies, quirks, whatever. One of the things that makes her tick is that aviation fumes, gasoline fumes, makes her nauseous. So if you're Amelia Earhart, the absolute worst possible spot to have a fuel leak in your airplane is in the cockpit. Guess where she has the fuel leak? So she's fighting this airplane tooth and nail across. She's aiming for Paris, and she comes along and she flies over Northern Ireland before Northern Ireland was its own separate country. And she takes stock of her situation. Again, engine, icing, instrumentation problems. This fuel leak is driving me crazy. She looks down and she sees this beautiful flat Irish farmland. And she starts thinking, Ireland is part of Europe, right? Yeah, Ireland is a neat part of Europe. Okay, got it. So what does she do? She forgets about Paris. She circles back and she greases the landing in an Irish farmer's field. In other words, greasing means perfect landing. Can't do any better. She rolls the wheels to a stop, hops out of the airplane, goes to this guy's house. Now, pardon me, ladies, for picking on gender, but she knocks on this guy's door, and he opens the door, and there's a few minutes of pregnant pause. Because here, there's her glamour shot, right there, there's Amelia, a beautiful woman, standing in front of the farmer. And he's going, why are you here? And she says, that's my airplane, I have just come from America. He says, okay. And he waits a few more minutes. And she realizes that who he's waiting for is the pilot. Read that as a man. And she says, no, time out, chill out, dude. I'm the pilot. I left Canada when I landed after 15 hours and 20 minutes of flying. The news goes out, she is safe, she's made it across the Atlantic Ocean, no problem. Big picture. They bring the airplane back to here to the United States, and 2 months later she flies this machine from LA to Teterboro, New Jersey. LA to essentially New York City in late August of 1932 in 19 hours and 5 minutes. She is the first woman to fly across the Atlantic as a passenger in 1928. She is the first woman to fly across the Atlantic Ocean solo in May of 32. She is the first woman to fly across the United States non-stop solo in 2 months later in August. All right. The airplane you're looking at is a Lockheed Vega. It is Lockheed's first design. You are looking at a wooden airplane. There is no metal for this airplane at all, ladies and gentlemen. The wings, the fuselage, and tail are all metal. The main load-bearing elements of this machine, it's wood. Now, it is a very popular airplane. A lot of people, famous aviators, non-famous aviators, it's a corporate aircraft also. You can buy it with red and gold trim. You can also buy one with white and blue trim, like we have done in Time and Navigation. An airplane that was flown by a fellow named Wiley Post around the world, not once but twice, in 31 and again in 33. But here's the deal about Amelia Earhart, ladies and gentlemen. Amelia Earhart's most famous flight is a flight she never finished. It is 1937. She is going to fly in what was known back then She was going to attempt to conquer what was known back then as aviation's Everest, a flight around the world at the equator. It had never been done before, man or woman. She would be the first. She's going to take off from Oakland, California with a navigator, and they were going to fly across the United States to Miami, south into the Caribbean, finding the South American coastline, follow that to the equator, and then for the next 5 weeks bounce north and south the equator as they marched around the globe. 6 weeks after leaving Oakland, California, they got as far as you can go on the other side of the world to the Pacific Ocean. A little town called Ley at an island called New Guinea. This is arguably one of the most famous pictures of Amelia. There she is standing in front of her Lockheed 10 Electra airplane. This is the airplane Amelia Earhart and her navigator, a guy named Fred Noonan, would be lost in actually 80 years ago tomorrow. Yeah, July 2nd. So, Amelia takes off, has made it all the way around the world to Ley, New Guinea. The flight, when she starts in Oakland 6 weeks ago, it was billed, it was thought of a vacation. We're going to fly a lot. We love flying. We're going to meet new people, see new lands, experience new things. Typical vacation rhetoric. 6 weeks later, we have two irritable, tired, beat down, exhausted, frazzled people. They fly 10 or 12 hours every flight. They have 3 or 4 hours on each end of the flight dealing with the airplane and the flight itself. They manage to have 5 hours of sleep a night in strange locations and strange food. Then they pick up and fly 2 more time zones and do it again. If you read accounts of her flight around the world at the time she did it or was attempting it, the term you hear frequently lays down as biological clock. But in today's world, biological clock means something entirely different. A more accurate term what she's dealing with back then in today's world is jet lag. And it is crushing. So she gets to Ley, New Guinea. Ley, New Guinea to the next stop, out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, so to speak. She realizes we gotta kick back, relax, we gotta recharge batteries, we gotta take a couple of days off and chill. So that's what she does. Because the longest portion of the flight is now going to take place between Ley, New Guinea, out of the waters of the open Pacific Ocean. 2,500 miles that way is a little island called Howland Island. 2 miles long, 1 mile wide, and a few feet off the water. The navigation has to be perfect. They have, this airplane has got 20 hours of fuel in the tanks. The flight will take them 18. So they have 2 hours to figure out if they're lost, how they get to where they need to be. Aviation's biggest mystery, ladies and gentlemen, is simple. Why Amelia Earhart, 80 years ago tomorrow, with a competent navigator who knew that neck of the woods, that Pacific Ocean, like the back of his hand. That was his job, his real job, not navigating her across. Why Fred Noonan could not find Howland Island. 80 years later, ladies and gentlemen, we still don't have the definitive answer why Amelia Earhart missed this little island. Was she captured by the Japanese and executed in their captivity because they felt she was spying for President Roosevelt? Is she alive and well, living in the world somewhere today? Maybe not in 2017. She'd be on the order of almost 120. But a book was written in 1970 where this fellow comes across a New Jersey housewife. Her name was Irene Boland. She was about 70 in 1970. The age of Amelia would be, plus or minus. And he wrote a book about it. I have read the book. It's interesting. I have seen the videos of somebody going and finding Irene and putting a microphone in her face and saying, "Are you really Amelia Earhart?" What I took away from this interview, ladies and gentlemen, is not Irene and Amelia were the same person. What I took away from this interview is I would never want to get Irene Boland angry with me. This woman had the nastiest temper of anybody I have ever heard. She was mad enough she could bite off nail heads. Leaving the third scenario. Oh, and by the way, what people have recently done, that's a CSI thing where they take one picture And there's another picture who think they're thinking that they're the same person, and they try to connect the dots, you know, with facial recognition. Somebody did that with Irene and Amelia 45 years ago. Irene was telling the truth. So leaving the third scenario that she gets lost, runs out of gas, ditches in the ocean, lands in the ocean, or on an island out there, and dies awaiting rescue that never comes. With no pun intended, the third scenario was the one that holds the most water today. She ran out of luck. She lands hoping to be rescued. She never was, and she passes away. The ironic twist of this story, ladies and gentlemen, is that she loved the press so much that she considered them free advertising. The 10 years she was in the public limelight, how she would do her thing, she'd make a flight. Then she'd go on the lecture circuit, describe what I did with this last flight. And this is back then where you pay $3 or $4 to sit in an auditorium, listen to Amelia Earhart talk about what she had to do. She would take that money from the lecture circuit, put it in the kitty to plan the next flight. So this is a vicious circle. So just before she takes off, and the flight around the world, she has a press conference, she says to the press assemble, I feel I have one good flight left in me. We're going to figure out what to do next after this flight is over. There were talk about her and her husband starting a family, that kind of thing. The ironic twist of the story, ladies and gentlemen, she never finished this flight. She is still out there. She would disappear tomorrow, 80 years ago, 3 weeks before her 40th birthday. All right? So coming up on July 24th this year, Amelia Earhart will turn the grand old age of 120 if she's still walking this earth. All right? And now, Amelia, as you may have guessed, a little hard to tell in that picture, but she was a tall, slender woman. You can tell by the haircut that she's got a man's bob, if you will. She's a very accomplished aviatrix. She likes to fly airplanes, and she likes to fly them a long distance. You can get an idea why one of her nicknames was Lady Lindy, after Charles Lindbergh. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let us go over and talk about the real Lindbergh and the most famous airplane in the history of aviation.